and welcome to NeckbeardNation, where we talk about dirty neckbeard stuff from an atheist viewpoint. I'm Buck. This is Matt. I've got my goblet of pop. Matt has his hat of the day, and we're going to talk today about guns. And since I don't have any guns, and these are Matt's guns, we're going to let Matt start, because I don't want to get shot. Matt.
Thank you, Buck. Hey, guys. I'm going to start by saying I just want to throw this out there that being an atheist who's into guns, I feel kind of like alone in this argument, because a lot of the videos I watch on YouTube and a lot of the culture, it seems that a lot of gun owners and gun enthusiasts are really right-wing religious, and I don't really mesh with them on any other viewpoints from what I find. I know that's not, totally the case, but just in a general view of it in the comment sections of videos and whatnot, and just listening to other gun enthusiasts talk, that's the feeling I get. And then I don't hear a lot from the atheist viewpoint, and I just feel like I'm kind of stuck between two ideals there, and I don't really have anybody else on my side. So that's where I'm kind of coming from on this. How about yourself?
Well, certainly not having anyone on your side is a very atheist viewpoint as it is.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But, my viewpoint on guns has often been one of that they're not necessary. I am more on the left end politically than Matt, and I tend to find that guns cause problems at a greater rate than they cause solutions. So I'm, on the end where I just want to get rid of them. I don't consider them to be a fundamental freedom. I don't consider them to be all that useful. So I have not the opposite viewpoint, but certainly a more extreme and very different viewpoint.
Yeah, and I guess I should start by saying a lot of my view on guns comes from the way I was raised. I was never really raised with guns, but I was always raised with a strong respect for human life and respect for anything that could take a human life, especially being guns. Even playing with toy guns as a kid, I was never allowed to point them at anybody. I would get in trouble by pointing them at another person. So it was always instilled in me, just never even come near to anything close to harming another person. And then I got into guns later in life, probably in my early 20s. When I moved to Colorado, and the gun laws there were pretty relaxed at the time. But I feel a lot of my feeling on the subject is it can be helped a lot with education and teaching people the value of human life and their responsibility in preventing harm to other people.
Yeah, and certainly in the realm of having legal gun ownership in the country, it would be nice to have more of those safeguards, more of societal progress towards the end of safer gun ownership. I would invoke such protections for society, try and get that education out there, but I think such a program should be done in conjunction with programs removing guns from society. In that way, you can have an additional benefit. And I base my opinions on this mostly on statistics. Where there are less guns, it is harder to commit intentional homicide. And it is harder to commit unintentional homicide. So, that being the case, I would advocate a policy where less people are in harm at any given time. And the statistics bear out that that is not having guns around. So I know you had sort of a different thought about not having guns around and safety.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that viewpoint, and I agree the numbers do show if you take guns away, there's going to be less deaths, and obviously less deaths from firearms. But as we talked about this a little bit before, and as I said before, if you take vehicles away from people, there's going to be less vehicle deaths, and I know your point, and that's not my main point, but you could kind of take that argument for a lot of different things. But my feeling on that is the firearms are so ingrained in our culture at this point that it's going to be really, really hard to remove them. And I feel like there's kind of a happy middle ground where you incorporate the education, you do what you can with that, incorporate the cultural values and the value of human life and people's values, and you kind of meet in the middle ground. I feel like you try to take the guns away from the high-risk individuals. I agree with that. And I even agree with maybe making more stringent laws in obtaining firearms just to make sure that they don't get in the hands of violent people. And I also realize that there's still going to be deaths from them, and you're never going to have a perfect system. And yes, if you did remove them all, nobody would die from guns. Mm-hmm. But I think it's too hard to get from now to the point where there are no guns, and I think there are steps we can take now to kind of meet in the middle that would be easier to do than just removing the guns altogether.
Sure. And I think there are easier steps, but certainly it would be a subject in which I would have a long-term view. And we both agreed that if you were to say no guns right now, tomorrow, it would cause a lot of bad things to start happening. But if you make a concerted effort to make that education available about the dangers of firearms and the benefits of a society that doesn't have them, you could easily create such a state. One of the arguments I often hear against this is the constitutional argument. Everyone goes, Second Amendment, we have a right to guns. To which I will say, the Constitution has 27 amendments, and guns are one of them. And that means that 27 times most of the people running America, or most Americans, said, hey, we fucked up, we better change this thing. So, as much as we think of the Constitution as sacrosanct these days, it's really not. And the idea of overturning an amendment isn't one that would be all that revolutionary. Certainly it was done with Prohibition. And the idea that you can do that moving forward, finding ways to make them more politically viable, would be a very positive development, I think, for our society, and sort of moving away from the culture that promotes the ownership of these dangerous devices.
Mm-hmm. I really have no argument to that, but what I would say is one of the main arguments as far as the constitutional amendments go is the amount of time that the Second Amendment has been around. I think I saw something like a little meme that it's been around for over 220 years, which isn't an argument. I mean, that's conservative, basically, I guess. Keep things the way they were. I'm not using that as an argument, but maybe that could be a reason why it might be harder to change. I'm not sure. I'm not really as up on law as Buck is, so I'm going to refer to his expertise on that. Mm-hmm. But I would say that if you even take away the Constitution, one of my other feelings is that human beings, from an evolutionary standpoint and just a environmental standpoint and whatnot, we're tool users, and we invented firearms as a tool. And taking away our tools, I likened it to taking away an animal's defensive tools, such as their claws. And Buck doesn't really agree that that's a...
It's a terrible metaphor.
Yeah, it's probably terrible, but it's the best I got. So, I mean, this is the way humans have evolved to defend themselves. From other humans, from their environment, from whatever. So it's kind of more of an argument from... Whereas a religious conservative would say it's a God-given right, I say it's an evolutionary right that we are tool users, and that's how we navigate the world. And you kind of handicapping us by taking them away in a way. But I understand it's a lot more involved than that. We're a very, we're modern society. We have a lot of intricacies, and the numbers show a lot more than what a gut feeling will show, or whatever, So I guess that's one of my main viewpoints. Is it goes beyond the Constitution. It goes to our almost primal abilities to be able to defend ourselves in a situation.
Well, first I want to make sure, when you talk about evolution, it's not a genetic thing that, now we have guns.
Well, I mean, it almost is, because of the way our hands are made to use tools. They're evolved to use tools, are the way our thumbs are.
Well, sure. We're evolved to use tools, but the gun is sort of out of the reach of evolutionary viewpoint. Certainly it's a progression of science, which is made possible by our evolution.
Yeah, I would say it's not directly tied to genes, but have you heard of teams, this new belief that technology is its own form of self-replicator, kind of? Yeah, it's kind of like genes, memes. Memes are like self-replicating ideas. Teams would be self-replicating technology, whereas it's evolving next to us, and our evolution gave way to this technological evolution, and it's just, I don't know, that's getting off track.
That's neither here nor there. But I think that having guns isn't that much of an advantage. I don't think the marginal utility you gain by having additional gun ownership compares anywhere near to the harm caused by that gun ownership. And taking that into account, it's better to take the small loss with the large gain, and to just not worry about the trade-off in that sense, because you're still profiting in terms of total societal utility.
Yeah. I should say I agree with you on that, and I totally agree that. And I use the argument of vehicles, that vehicles can kill people if used improperly. And that's a perfect example for what you're saying, is the utility of vehicles is a lot greater than whatever negatives may come.
Yes.
And with a gun, it's a little more imbalanced with a firearm. Obviously, if it was 100 years ago or more, then a firearm would be a lot more valuable for hunting and whatnot. And when our infrastructure for police and whatnot was not as developed, and this is where talking with Buck is, opening up my eyes. I hope maybe I helped him a little, but I totally agree. He's starting to convince me that, I see another side of it that I didn't see before. But I think as we going back to what we were saying, is getting from point A to point B is not always as easy. And I think to start out for now, knowing that we can't just get rid of guns tomorrow, whatever, maybe we could, but whatever. Right. We should look at it objectively and from a, skeptical scientific viewpoint and see what we can do. And I think the education thing would be a big help in instilling values and,
Yeah, be very careful in being convinced by me. I am a lawyer. It is my job to convince people of things.
I think it's the, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's the unwillingness to move backwards on your case, but
yes.
I'll be willing to move backwards.
Yeah, but I think one of the measures we were looking at leading up to this episode is the international comparisons.
Oh, yeah.
And the sociocultural factors that lead into homicide rates being different around the world. And one of the comparisons that we had was between the United States and Canada. Canada has much the same sociocultural, if not just about exactly the same sociocultural elements that our society has. And yet their intentional homicide rate is way, way, way below ours in terms of per capita, because obviously Canada's about a tenth of our size in population. So from that viewpoint, I find it to be pretty interesting that Canada has pretty similar gun laws to the United States. Obviously not exactly the same, but pretty similar to our states here, Massachusetts. And since I'm sort of new to Massachusetts, Matt here has a lot to say about the Massachusetts gun laws.
Yeah, that is, I guess I should say before I respond to that is, the gun laws are different in every state. So when you say Canada's gun laws are a lot like ours, then you got to pick what state you're talking to, and talking about. Mm-hmm. And I would say that from my research, they are a lot like Massachusetts gun laws. From what I've heard, and I'll correct me if I'm wrong because I've never lived in Canada. If anybody could let us know about this, I've heard that maybe a lot of places, or I don't know if it's all of Canada, but people have to keep dangerous guns at their sporting club, and they have to be a member of a club. I might be getting that wrong with the United Kingdom or something like that, but let me know. But anyways, yeah, they are a lot like Massachusetts. I wonder what the numbers in Massachusetts compared to like if you just looked at Massachusetts compared to Canada, if they're a lot closer, if they would show a correlation. But I agree that we've looked at the numbers, and places where you have stricter gun laws, there are less deaths from guns. And
well, I don't think that's necessarily what I'd be going with. I mean, yes, that's true. But in the case of Canada, I think it's more of a case of economic equality and inclusion.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because here there's a lot of ghettoization and desperation that leads people into life crime, and that leads to a lot of homicides.
Exactly. I completely agree, and I'm glad that you brought up. I think we should go into the economic point of it. Is, I mean, I was trying to think of a way to remedy the situation as far as education goes, but definitely closing the economic gap can only help a society from every standpoint, you know what I'm saying? But I agree that, there are other factors at play, and there's also, I mean, everybody always says Canadians are the most polite people and everything. There's also that social, I don't know, that culture that of being polite and caring about people, and I think that leads into Japan as well, which has even further gun laws in that direction, I'm sure.
Right. So, and the other comparison I wanted to make was the differential between USA and Canada and China and Japan. Because USA and Canada have pretty similar gun laws, but where there's more societal equality in Canada, there's a lot less homicides. Meanwhile, if you go to China and Japan, which both have extremely restrictive gun laws, you see a similar pattern but on a lower level. China has a homicide rate of about the same as Canada's. But in their case, they have massive economic inequalities and large levels of poverty. But because of restricting gun ownership, they're able to keep that low. Meanwhile, in Japan, where they have stricter gun laws and a society with more wealth and a greater economic inclusion, you don't have that sort of problem. So I would say that those factors are both included in how one should approach viewing solutions to this issue. So, our 20-minute buzzer is going off, and that means we are going to wrap up for today. You can find us on Twitter at NeckbeardBros, Facebook at NeckbeardNation, email us at TheNeckbeardNation@gmail.com. Shout out to Hugo and Jake from Bible Reloaded, being our first Twitter followers. You guys are awesome. And with that, I will say good day, sirs.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys, and anything you have to say on this topic, let us know. We did some homework. We hope you guys do some homework and share your viewpoints with us.
Absolutely.
Through any of those sources.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.